I think this talk's going to be 10 minutes, but going by the intro, we'll see. We'll see how we go. So put your hands up if you love MSBuild. No, nobody? Okay, a few hands. Okay. So if you've got your hands down, then this talk is for you, because what I'm going to show you really helps get to grips with it and ultimately spend less time with it when things go wrong, and that's always good. So apologies, my slide deck is not working. There we go. No. Bear with me. Lost the slide deck. Cool. So I think a lot of you know me. For those of you who don't know me, I blog at Stuart.dev, and you can follow me at all my things. You can also follow me on Twitter, but you don't have to, because my DMs are open if you just want to chat about anything you like. So this is me on my Mac doing a dotNET build. Apologies, you can't see the text, but it's errored, and it's errored with a compiler warning or compiler error. And those are the best, right? Because they tell you this exact thing went wrong, and here's exactly where it went wrong, so you can fix it. But often we don't get just compiler errors; we get other types of errors. And sometimes we don't even get errors. We get we're trying to do a .NET publish, and we're hoping that a file ends up in a publish folder, and it doesn't. And we want to know, why didn't that happen? So sometimes we're not trying to figure out what went wrong. It's we're trying to figure out what didn't happen. And when you have text output, which is what MSBuild historically is giving you, it's not really that helpful. So to solve that, Microsoft have introduced this thing called binary logging, which is awesome. And they added it back in MSBuild 15, I think. And I can't remember when that was. But odds are, unless you're dealing with legacy, you're going to have access to this. So what you can do is you can say .NET build/BL, stands for binary logging, and that gives you this bin log file here. And you can do the same for classic MSBuild. You do MSBuild your solution /BL. You can change the name of the file, but by default you get this msbuild.binlog file. And this is obviously a binary file, and it's really, really rich in information. So Microsoft actually used this internally to replay MSBuild against customer builds. So it's really, really dense in information, but it's also quite compact. So if you were to compare it to doing a build with verbose output and not compressing it, this actually comes in sometimes smaller. But because it's binary, we need something to view it with. So if you don't install any of the tools, you can open it with Visual Studio or Visual Studio for Mac, and you get a summary view, which is okay, but it's nowhere near as good as this tool I'm going to show you now, which is called MSBuild Structured Log Viewer. So this thing is built by a guy called Kirill, who works on the .NET team. It's not an official Microsoft thing, but it's the closest thing you'll find to it. And it's awesome. So basically, you can just double click on one of these files and open it. I'm going to show you now a quick demo. So last time I gave this demo, by the way, I couldn't see my screen, and the audience had to point to where my cursor was, and the whole thing was a disaster. So I've got a really low bar to try and beat when I do the demo this time around. So don't worry if you can't see this. I'll just be pointing out things as I go along. So here's one I've opened up earlier. So you can double click on a bin log file, and this will open up, this log viewer, and this is what you get basically. And the first thing I want to call out is that you've got this files tab down here, and this has all of the files, all of the build files that were involved in the build are all here. Now, these aren't necessarily the files on my machine. This may have come from a build server or someone else's machine, and those are the actual versions on that machine. So already it's beating text output, because you can actually debug things that are happening on your CI server, for example. And then coming back into this side, this is your actual log now. So I hope the most obvious thing is it's quite visual, it's colorful, and you can interact with it, so you can drill into stuff, and it's kind of structured in terms of its dependencies, so you can kind of figure out what's gone on and why. And if you double click on any one of these nodes, you'll get the source code. So you can kind of use this as a way of kind of figuring out how MSBuild works and going straight to, if something's gone wrong, a file's not been copied, you can kind of drill and find it and sort it out. Something else you can do, if we double click on our project file here, this should be familiar, like a csproj project file. If you right click on it, it's going to demo fail. Yeah, you can do pre-process, and this is the first step when you do an MSBuild build. It will actually pre-process your file and bring in all of those imports from those files that I showed you earlier. So if you want to know what happens in a build, it's like, can you see the scroll bar? There's like a lot of stuff, so that there's a lot that can go wrong for sure, which is why a tool like this is really useful. You can search through this file, but you don't want to do that. What you really want to do is, there's a search facility here. So for example, if we said like version suffix, then obviously I typed that wrong. You can like search for properties, it shows you all occurrences of them, and you can see where it's used. So it's really fast to kind of drill into where stuff is going wrong. But even better than that is if you clear this down, you can see in this text here, this kind of explains the query syntax for the search pane, and they have some predefined useful searches. For example, there's one here for CSC, which is the compile task. So if you click that, you can go straight to the compile step down here. You can drill into it, and for example, you can see the command line argument that was used to actually compile the thing if you want to actually just like run it at the command line. So you can kind of really drill into this stuff, but I hope you can appreciate what's more useful is the actual sort of visual view of this, where you can actually drill in and see at a very quick glance what the parameters were passed to this command line, what the reference paths were, all the rest of it. So it's really, this is like miles better than trying to use the text view for sure. And so CSC is one of the most complex steps of your build. Obviously, it's like compiling stuff. But another complex part of the build outside of that is actually resolving the assembly references. So we've got these paths here that are the references, but they actually need to be computed in this task here. So that's also another handy one to jump to. So if you click that, you can very quickly see here this task. You can drill into the results, and you can see for each of the references, I resolved it here, and I used this search path, and I the reference wasn't copy local, blah, blah. So you can very quickly drill in and see what's going on. So I find this like mega useful for all my build woes, basically. Another great feature it has is a timeline view. So here you can kind of see at a very quick glance everything that happened in your build. So if you've got a massive solution at the place you work, you know how it is. Here's a very quick way of being able to see what is happening where. So obviously here, the compile CSC step is taking ages. But if you just double click on one of these things, you go straight into where it's, where in the log it's happening. So for example, I was debugging a Xamarin app on my Android phone, and it was taking 40 seconds to do a debug deploy. And I was saying like, what's going on? I looked in that timeline view, I could see instantly that 38 seconds of it was spent compressing images, which you don't want for a debug build. So just within like a few minutes, I was able to completely eradicate my problem. So this thing comes and saves the day so often. So definitely go off and install it. That concludes the demo, so it went better than last time, a few. So should you use it in CI? I do. One thing to bear in mind is that this log file contains so much information. It contains all of the MSBuild properties, and by default, that will include all of your environment variables. So as long as your CI server doesn't have secrets in your environment variables, which you shouldn't, but you never know, then you've got no problem switching this thing on. And it's really, really handy then, because if you have a build that breaks, and you've got a previous build that succeeds, and you've got these files side by side, you can very quickly look at it. And for example, you'll very quickly see things like, oh, the build agent has a newer version of the .NET Core SDK that has a different target. That means that these things now behave subtly different, that breaks us. You know the types of things that you spend days on and you finally get there. This really helps get to the bottom of those really quickly. And that's it. Any questions? Thanks very much.